Hey, what up? It's the number one party boy, Peter. I'm probably not gonna do that. Hey everyone, it's Peter. It's Movie Rants again. We're back. I know that for the long time this was on Sean's channel on Buckeye, but we're moving over here now. We're trying a new thing. It's not just short films over here on the Party Boy Studio. And I figured the best thing to do when bringing this format back is to actually review a movie that I was in. I know, not biased at all. I'm pretty sure that everyone who follows me here is a follower of Buckeye, and if you are, I'm pretty sure you've probably seen Best of Enemies, the new Spider-Man film that Sean directed, and something that I had the honor of being in. So I figured I could go over 5 things that I really loved about it, and we can kind of delve into that. It's good to be back, and here we go. One of the major things that I loved about Best of Enemies was Peter Parker's struggle with his responsibility of being Spider-Man alongside his fear of people getting hurt. I think it's something that we've seen done with Spider-Man before, but I think what Sean did was nail the true anxiety and fear that Peter Parker would go through.
It's because I'm scared, Glenn. I'm scared that if I step in and do what I can, then I'm gonna let someone get hurt. I'm gonna fail and make everything worse.
Very often we get a Peter Parker that's like, I gotta go out there and I gotta be Spider-Man, but you don't really see the toll that being Spider-Man takes on his mental health. We know it physically hurts him, but going with this Spider-Man who's like, hey, I've been going through a lot of things, how is that going to take a toll on his mind? I think that's a really intriguing thing that Sean gets into. And Peter Parker isn't the only character who gets good arcs. Both Jackal, Harry Osborn's the Goblin, heck, even like Mencken and Shocker in a way get character arcs related to them. Harry, though I may be slightly biased with this one, has a really interesting character arc that builds as the movie progresses. Him and Miles Warren, the Jackal, have this incredibly engaging chemistry, and more importantly, that chemistry in a way mirrors Peter and Harry's relationship in ways about how they need each other. One of the best parts about this new film is 100% the fight scenes. Sean and our stunt coordinator, Jacob, really went all out. And I think what they do best is that every single fight feels different than the one we've seen before. Each one is engaging in different ways. I'm not much of a fighter, but you can see that they really did the work because I look intimidating in this film, and that's hard to do because I'm like 5'4". I'm the shortest person. Here's just some set photos, and some pictures of the group. I'm really tiny, so anytime I go up against someone, Sean and Jacob had to really do their job to make it look like I could take that person on, and I think it really shows. I think the thing that I have the most respect for with Sean in making Best of Enemies is the fact that he doesn't erase responsibility. Responsibility is a film that he made when he was around 14, 15. It's a really great starter Spider-Man film, but it was shot on an iPhone. It was edited on an iPhone. There are things in that movie that Sean doesn't really like, and to be fair, he's grown so much as a director that responsibility looks different than the way Best of Enemies does. Best of Enemies is shot on a camera with different lenses. We have a handheld rig now. We have a much better tripod. And I say we as in the group. Sean's the one who has this nice tripod and the handheld rig. I have a pretty good tripod that's on here that I like, and the mic and my camera that we're talking to. But what Best of Enemies could have done was just go full clean slate. We start from the beginning. Responsibility never happened. But what I like about Sean's idea in this movie is that he takes responsibility as this base plate. He goes, hey, that movie happened. There's character stuff in that movie that we're still going to build on. Peter's and Harry's relationship is built on. The Eric Riley concept is built on. This idea of Peter giving up being Spider-Man is in, not Power and Responsibility, that's a different movie, in Best of Enemies. And what is really neat about that is it works. You need to actually watch Responsibility before watching Best of Enemies. And I think that's really impressive for someone who I know doesn't love Responsibility, but I think it's really cool that Sean still took the time to acknowledge his previous work, and I think that's really cool. I think this building on of like responsibility, where you can see that these shots have been redone or concepts have been expanded upon, shows a real growth in a filmmaker and a real growth in a director. And I think it's really cool that I got to be there for both. And I think that's really neat. Being Harry Osborn, I really love being on set with Sean and watching him grow as like an artist. And I think within this box of Spider-Man, he's really figured out what he loves about the character and what he loves about his style with the character. And I think Best of Enemies is a really great way of showcasing that. One of the best parts about this movie is that Sean has expanded the cast of characters. Not only adding new characters, but getting new actors to play them. Some of the faces you may have noticed is Lillian, who plays Gwen Stacy. She was also in Plant Detective. Very good job in both. We have Dom, who plays the Shocker, a role that I used to be. I would say he does a much, much better job, considering the fact that he is actually threatening in this movie. And his gauntlets look a lot better than the gardening gloves I used to wear. And we have Jacob, who plays Menken, who is also our stunt choreographer. Which is really funny because Menken gets like the tar beaten out of him, which is hilarious because anytime you watch that, Jacob's like, hey, so you're gonna like tackle me and it's gonna look great. And I'm like, are you sure, man? And then you watch it and it looks really good because he's really good at his job. And Shocker and him, Dom, have a really great chemistry, and you can see that on and off screen. And also, my pal Eric Lloyd's, also from Plant Detective, he plays Miles Warren the Jackal. And I think what Eric does is, and this is going to sound extremely biased because, he's my best friend and also we're in most of the scenes together. But what Eric does with Jackal is he brings this legitimate, more timid performance. He's a lot quieter. He's a lot more subtle. And when you pair that up with me as Harry, who is this person of anger and vengeance and spite, it's a really interesting dynamic because Warren isn't in this for revenge. He's in this as a man of science, a man of creation. He is curious about the world that he's in and his own, part in it. Whereas Harry is fueled by his hatred of Spider-Man, so he's a lot more angry. He's a lot like this. I do a lot of yelling in this movie.
Ah! Ah!
I do a lot of punching, too. And when you team me up with Eric, Sean created this really interesting dynamic where they seem to be very close. They seem to be connected because they balance each other out. There's a scene in the car. You can see that Warren truly cares for Harry, and he's able to kind of talk him down from this ledge. Like, Harry only cares about getting Spider-Man. And so Warren cares not about Spider-Man, but about Harry. And so that relationship is something that's fundamental. And there's two relationships with Harry in this movie. The one with him and Peter and the one with him and Warren. And I think both are given just the right amount of time to feel real. I think that's really cool. One of the final things I want to touch on, and it's going to be spoilers, so I'm going to put a time code right here to when the spoilers are done, is the way that this movie sets up future projects and future character arcs. The end credits scene, which was written by Eric Lloyd's and filmed by Sean wonderfully and everything, it sets up this idea that Eric Riley died. He died in responsibility, and now he's Ben Riley. And there's this whole idea of the Jackal being his father. And that is a major twist because we've always thought that Eric Riley was this original character Sean created. So tying him into this whole clone conspiracy, clone saga-like concept is really intriguing. And Peter Parker is Spider-Man again. He's staying as Spider-Man. He's going to fight new adversaries, and he's going to try and make sure that the world, New York in that example, or Cleveland if you know better, because the Key Bank building's in this movie. Peter is making sure that it never gets to the point where it was in this movie, that things are as chaos because he left. He's taking on that mantle of responsibility, if you will. And I think that's really cool. I think it sets up for a really mature Peter for the third movie, because responsibility is all about Peter becoming Spider-Man. And this one is all about him realizing that he has to be Spider-Man. He thought he could leave it in responsibility, but he learns in this one that no matter what he does, his actions are going to have consequences, and he has to own up to that and come to the realization that no matter what he does as Spider-Man, people may get hurt, but he still has to stop greater problems from happening, and I think that's freaking awesome. I think the thing that I love most about Best of Enemies is that it's just a very well-paced, solid story. Like, I was there for a lot of it, and there's a scene that we cut out even, and when I'm watching the film, I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice that we cut that scene out because everything flows together so well. And I think that is majorly in part to a very tight script that Sean wrote. Every character gets enough screen time. Every emotional moment is allowed to breathe and exist. And it's funny, and there's great action. I punch a lot of people in this movie. It is insane the amount of people I punch. But also, all that punching has a purpose. I'm a character of vengeance. I'm a character of anger. So I would make sense that I'm brutal. I cave a dude's head in. It's pretty awesome. Also, I do that in the movie. That's a bad joke. But in all seriousness, Best of Enemies is, in my opinion, a really great snapshot of the future of Sean as an artist and Buckeye as a studio in all essence. It shows that there's quality filmmaking to be made in this Spider-Man fan film community, and I, for one, am excited to see where Sean goes next, and I'm excited to see how he expands upon this story and this world. And I can't wait to be there with him for it. Except I die. Spoilers. I die in this movie, I think. I do. I die at the very end. I'm going to put a spoiler thing in the morning, but